I warned you." Emily's voice was cold, laced with a hint of triumph, as she sat beside Andrew in the car. She held out her phone, its screen glowing like irrefutable proof. "Take a look, hero of the destitute." Andrew squinted at the crystal-clear footage. The wallet fell. The boy picked it up. A quick glance around, then he simply shoved it into his pocket, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Emily hit pause. He took it. "These beggars are worthless. That's why they live the lives they do. It doesn't matter how much money you give away, Andrew. You can't change that. That's your lesson, my love." Andrew stared at the screen for a moment. Then he lowered the phone and let out a deep, disappointed sigh. "Yeah, maybe you're right, honey. Maybe I shouldn't be so quick to trust people." Emily took his hand, her voice softening. "But you can trust me. I only ever want what's best for you, my love." A moment later, she reached for the door handle, ready to get out. Andrew, confused by the gesture, asked, "Where are you going?" Without a hint of hesitation, she said, "I'm going to get your wallet back. There was $1,000 in there. That kid doesn't deserve a single cent of it. I'm getting it back." But the millionaire gripped her hand, stopping her from getting out. "No, just let him keep it. We're not going to make a scene over that money. Besides, I already took out my ID and credit cards. There was nothing important in there. Just let the boy have it. Let's go." Meanwhile, on the street corner, a young boy named Ethan sat alone. He opened the wallet. Inside was a lot of money, but what caught his attention was a small, stiff business card. He was blind and couldn't read, but he knew he had to find someone to read the card so he could return the wallet. A cold wind cut through his thin shirt, making him shiver. But this shiver was different. It came from deep within. He felt his head begin to pound, and a strange wave of exhaustion washed over him. He knew he had to hurry. Using the wall for support, Ethan felt his way toward a nearby street vendor. Just as he opened his mouth to ask the vendor for help, a wave of dizziness hit him. The world swam around him. He knew he couldn't stay on his feet any longer. The boy stumbled into a nearby alley, found a secluded corner, and curled into a ball, shivering. He drifted into a feverish haze, still clutching the wallet in his hand. Back at the mansion, Andrew went straight into his study and shut the door. Emily paced the spacious living room, unable to sit still. The image of the scrawny boy from the footage played over and over in her mind. "It's $1,000, she told herself. "I'm getting it back." Without a word to Andrew, she grabbed her car keys and slipped out, driving back to the street. When she arrived, the boy was nowhere in sight. She searched the area and finally spotted him in a narrow alleyway. He was curled up on the ground, shaking with fever. Emily moved closer. She knelt, brushing a strand of matted hair away from his forehead. The moment her hand touched his skin, she recoiled. He was burning up. His forehead felt like a hot coal. A jolt of real panic shot through her, erasing all thoughts of money or of being right. "Oh my God, he's burning up," she muttered. She shook his shoulder gently. Hey kid, wake up." The boy stirred, his eyes fluttering open. But they didn't look at her. They looked right through her, into nothingness. They were unfocused. And that's when it hit her. The boy. He was blind. A blind boy, burning with fever, lying alone in a cold alleyway, and the only thing he was clutching was her husband's wallet. Emily's heart constricted in her chest. Without a second thought, she scooped him up into her arms. He was terrifyingly light. She rushed him to the car and sped toward the nearest hospital. In the waiting room, Emily couldn't sit still. Nurses had already taken Ethan into the emergency room. The wallet now lay on the seat beside her, but it was the furthest thing from her mind. She just stared at the ER doors, her mind a tangled mess. After what felt like an eternity, a nurse emerged and said the boy's fever had broken and he was sleeping. Emily breathed a sigh of relief. She was allowed to sit by his bedside. When Ethan woke up, he asked weakly, "Is anyone there?" His voice was small and trembling. Emily quickly took his small hand in hers. "I'm here. How are you feeling?" Ethan didn't answer the question. Instead, he tried to sit up, his other hand still clutching the wallet. He said, his voice laced with urgency, "Ma'am, the wallet. I have to return it to its owner. There's a business card inside." Emily froze. The boy's words hit her like a hammer, shattering every bit of her smug certainty and prejudice. She had been wrong, utterly and completely wrong. This boy never intended to steal the money. Blind, sick, and hungry, the only thing on his mind was doing the right thing. Tears began to stream down Emily's cheeks. She came to a bitter realization. The worthless one in this story wasn't the boy, but her own judgment. Emily sat there, holding Ethan's small hand, and for the first time in years, she wasn't thinking about money or status or about being right. She only saw a brave, honest boy lying in a hospital bed. She pulled out her phone, her fingers trembling as she dialed Andrew's number. "Andrew," she said, her voice breaking. I was wrong." On the other end of the line, Andrew was silent for a moment. He didn't ask about the wallet. There was no "I told you so" in his voice. He just asked gently, "Where are you?" "I'm at the hospital, with the boy." Andrew didn't ask any more questions. He just said, "I'm on my way." When Andrew walked into the hospital room, he saw a sight he would never forget. Emily, his tough, pragmatic wife, was sitting by the bed, gently dabbing the face of the homeless boy she had once scorned. They never spoke of the bet again. It seemed so petty and insignificant now. When Ethan was stronger, they took him home with them. For the first time in his life, Ethan slept in a soft bed, covered by a warm blanket. He didn't say much, just quietly took it all in. To him, this house felt like a dream. The next day, Andrew and Emily took Ethan to the best eye specialist in the city. After a thorough examination, the doctor looked at them and said, "The boy's condition isn't hopeless. He has congenital cataracts, which is like a cloudy film that has covered his eyes since birth." Emily held her breath. "So, is there anything we can do, doctor?" The doctor offered a kind smile. "Yes, of course. The good news is that we can perform a surgery to remove them. He'll have the chance to see the world." Andrew and Emily looked at each other, their eyes welling with tears, but this time they were tears of joy and hope. Looking at Ethan, sitting quietly in his chair, completely unaware of the wonderful news, they knew they wanted to do more than just pay for his surgery. They wanted to give him a home, a family. They drove home in silence, but it was a different kind of silence from the tense one before. It was a comfortable silence, filled with hope. Ethan sat in the back seat. He didn't say a word, just sat there quietly. For the first time in his life, he was riding in such a smooth car. His small fingers traced the soft surface of the leather seat, exploring a new world through his sense of touch. Andrew was driving, but he kept glancing at the boy in the rearview mirror. He saw a gentle, quiet child. He saw the resilience hidden beneath his frail exterior. Emily had turned in her seat to watch Ethan directly. Her gaze never left him. She watched the way he tilted his head, listening to the traffic outside, and she looked at his small shoulders. A powerful, protective love swelled in her chest, a feeling she hadn't felt in a very long time. She turned back to look at Andrew. He was watching her in the mirror. Their eyes met. No words were needed. They both knew what the other was thinking. Finally, Emily spoke softly. "Andrew, I'm listening, my love. I don't want to. Let him go." Her voice trembled. "I don't want him to just go back to the streets after his surgery." Andrew didn't respond immediately. He just pulled the car over to the curb and stopped. He turned to his wife and took her hand. "Neither do I, Emily. I don't want that either." Emily looked directly into her husband's eyes, fresh tears beginning to fall. "I want him to stay with us, for good, as our family." A warm, relieved smile spread across Andrew's face. "That's all I've been hoping for, Emily, ever since you called me from the hospital." They both turned to look at Ethan. The boy, perhaps from exhaustion, had fallen asleep, his head tilted gently to one side. He looked so peaceful, with none of the fear or worry he carried on the street. In that moment, they were simply two people who had found something more precious than all the money in the world. Andrew gave his wife's hand a gentle squeeze, then started the engine and pulled away. But this time, they weren't just going home. They were taking their son home. News of Ethan quickly reached Margaret, Emily's mother. She drove to her daughter's house immediately, but she didn't come to congratulate them. Margaret pulled Emily into a private room, her face grim. "Have you lost your mind, Emily?" she said, her voice sharp as ice. "Adopting a blind beggar boy. You're ruining your life." Emily replied calmly, "His name is Ethan, Mother, and we love him. He's going to be our son." Margaret scoffed. "Your son? Have you forgotten? Andrew never wanted children. All these years, he's the one who didn't want to be tied down. He just feels sorry for the boy now. He'll get tired of him soon enough." She took Emily's hands. "Listen to me. Leave Andrew. You deserve a better man. Someone who actually wants to give you a family." But this was a different Emily. She pulled her hands away. "No, Mother. You're wrong about Andrew, and you're wrong about Ethan. I'm not going anywhere. This is my family." With that, Emily walked out of the room, leaving Margaret alone with her fury. Unable to convince her daughter, Margaret decided to take matters into her own hands. A few days later, while Andrew and Emily were out finalizing the adoption paperwork, Margaret came over to watch Ethan. She sat down next to the boy, her voice sickeningly sweet. "Ethan, dear, there's something I need to tell you." Ethan turned toward the sound of her voice, listening silently. "Andrew and Emily," Margaret began, her tone dripping with false pity. "They're very kind, but they've had a change of heart. They said that taking care of a boy who can't see is just too much work. They don't want to adopt you anymore." Ethan's world shattered. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. "No, that can't be right. Miss Emily and Mr. Andrew promised." Margaret pressed a plane ticket into his hand. "But don't you worry. I found a better place for you, a special school far away where you'll be taken care of. I've already bought your ticket. We're leaving right now, before they get back. That way, they won't have to feel awkward." Ethan didn't know what to do. He was just a child. He believed what adults told him. Tears streamed down his cheeks. Once again, he was being abandoned. Silently, he allowed Margaret to lead him by the hand out of the house he had only just started to call home. Andrew and Emily returned that afternoon, papers in hand, their hearts full of joy. They were ready to start their new life with Ethan. "Ethan, we're home," Emily called cheerfully as she walked through the door. But there was no reply. They searched everywhere. The living room, the kitchen, the garden, and finally, Ethan's room. It was empty. The bed was neatly made, but the boy was gone. Panic began to set in for Emily. "Where is he, Andrew? Where's Ethan?" Andrew tried to stay calm, but his own voice trembled. "Easy, honey. Maybe he's just hiding somewhere." But deep down, they both knew something was terribly wrong. Andrew rushed to the security room and pulled up the camera footage. They rewound the tape from earlier that day. They saw themselves leaving. Then they saw Margaret's car pull up, and then a horrifying scene unfolded. They saw Emily's mother talking to Ethan. They couldn't hear the words, but they saw the boy's heartbroken expression. Then they watched as she led him by the hand out the front door, a small backpack on his shoulders. Emily stared, stunned. She couldn't believe her eyes. Tears streamed down her face. How could she do this? How could she be so cruel? Andrew's hands clenched into fists, rage flashing across his face. She must have lied to him. The ticket, the airport. "We have to get to the airport now." They raced to the car, not wasting a second. The entire way, Emily wept while Andrew drove, a fire burning in his chest. At the airport, they split up to search. Through the bustling crowds, they yelled the boy's name. "Ethan! Ethan!" Finally, it was Emily who spotted him. Ethan was sitting alone on a bench near a departure gate, clutching his small backpack. He looked so small and lost amidst the chaos. They rushed toward him. "Ethan!" Andrew called out. The boy flinched, turning toward the sound of their voices. He recognized them. He stood up and took a step back, a look of both joy and fear on his face. Andrew knelt in front of Ethan, placing his hands gently on the boy's shoulders. "No, Ethan, it's not true. It was a lie. We need you. We love you so much." Andrew's voice choked with emotion. He looked directly into the boy's unseeing eyes and continued, this time revealing a secret he had kept locked away for a long time. "Years ago, I had a son. I wasn't careful, and he was taken from me. From that day on, a part of my heart just died." Tears began to stream down Andrew's face. "And when I met you, Ethan, I saw all the best parts of him in you. You are honest, you are kind, and you are so strong, no matter how hard life gets. You brought my heart back to life." Andrew pulled the boy into a hug. Will you come home with us? Will you be our son?" Ethan stood frozen for a moment, and then he burst into tears. But this time, they were tears of happiness. He wrapped his small arms around Andrew's neck. I want to come home." They drove back. This time, Ethan didn't sit in the back alone. He sat between Andrew and Emily, falling asleep from exhaustion, his head resting on Emily's shoulder. Andrew slowed the car, wanting this moment to last forever. Back at the house, Andrew gently carried Ethan to his bedroom. Emily tucked him in and sat for a long time, just watching his peaceful face as he slept. When she returned to the living room, Andrew was waiting. He wrapped his arms around her. "You were right," he said. Emily nodded, a new determination in her eyes. She picked up her phone and dialed a number. On the other end, her mother answered, sounding impatient. "Well, is everything all right?" Emily's voice was cold and final. "Ethan's home, Mother. With us." There was a silence on the other end. Then Margaret started to make excuses. "Emily, I was only trying to do what's best for you." "No," Emily cut her off. "You tried to take my son from me. I don't want to see you again. Don't call. Don't come here. We're done." She hung up before her mother could say another word. She had severed the final toxic tie. From now on, she had only one family, Andrew and Ethan. A few days later, they were getting the paperwork in order for Ethan's eye surgery. To complete his medical records, they needed to run a few tests, including a blood draw. That evening, Emily was helping Ethan change into his pajamas. As she pulled a t-shirt over his head, she froze. On Ethan's right shoulder blade was a small, pale brown birthmark with a very peculiar shape. Emily's heart started pounding, her hand trembling. She reached out to touch it. "Andrew," she called, her voice strained. "Get in here, quick." Andrew rushed in, alarmed. "What is it? What's wrong?" Emily said nothing, just pointed with a trembling finger at Ethan's shoulder. Andrew followed her gaze. He froze too, his eyes widening. "No, it can't be," he whispered. "This birthmark." Emily burst into tears, looking at her husband, her voice filled with a desperate, unbelievable hope. "It's identical. Andrew, it's identical to our son's. 10 years ago, their newborn son had been kidnapped from the hospital, and all they had to remember him by was the small, peculiar birthmark on his right shoulder. A wild, impossible hope ignited in both their minds. Could it be a coincidence, or was this a miracle? The next day, Andrew called the hospital. He requested they run one more test on Ethan's blood sample, a DNA test. The days they spent waiting for the results felt like an eternity. Finally, the phone rang. Andrew put it on speaker, his hand gripping Emily's. The doctor's voice on the other end came through, clear and certain. "Mr. and Mrs. Carter, I have the DNA results here. There is no possibility of a mistake. The boy, Ethan, is your biological son." Andrew dropped the phone. It hit the floor with a dry clatter, but neither of them noticed. They were both in stunned silence, staring at each other through tears. Emily was the first to move. She lunged toward Ethan, who was playing on the carpet, and threw her arms around him, holding him so tightly it surprised him. "What's wrong?" Ethan asked softly, feeling Emily's tears fall onto his shoulder. Emily couldn't speak. She just shook her head, holding him even tighter. Andrew knelt beside them, wrapping his arms around them both. He looked at Ethan's innocent face and said, his voice breaking with happiness, "Nothing's wrong, son. It's just, we found you. You're our son." A few weeks later, the most important day had come. Ethan lay in a hospital bed, with Andrew and Emily on either side, each holding one of his hands. The boy was a little scared, but the warmth from his parents' hands reassured him. The surgery had been a success. Now, it was time to remove the bandages. The doctor gently unwrapped the final layer of gauze from Ethan's eyes. "Slowly now, Ethan," the doctor said gently. "Just blink very slowly." Ethan did as he was told. At first, everything was just a blur of light and shadow. He blinked again. The image began to focus, like a painting coming to life. And the first thing he saw with perfect clarity in his entire life were two faces leaning over him, two faces smiling and crying at the same time, his mother's face and his father's. Ethan stared at them for a long moment. He had imagined them through their voices and their touch, but seeing them in the flesh was 1,000 times more wonderful. A brilliant smile spread across his face. He whispered the two words he had always longed to say, "Mom, Dad." From that day on, Ethan's world was no longer just sound and touch. It was filled with color. For the first time, he saw the green of the grass in the yard and the blue of the sky above. He stared in wonder at the illustrated pages of books, something he had previously only known through the raised dots of Braille. Their life was filled with laughter. The sound of Ethan's shouts of joy as he played tag with Andrew in the garden. The sound of Emily's happy laughter as she read him bedtime stories. The once thin and timid boy blossomed into a cheerful, confident child, surrounded by endless love. He went to school, made friends, and played just like any other kid. In the end, the wallet test hadn't just returned Andrew's $1,000. It had returned to them a fortune far greater, something more precious than all the wealth in the world. It had brought their lost son home.